based in Odesa and now in Kyiv. And last night, just talking with Ukrainian friends here on what's about to happen after the drone attack on that Kerch Strait bridge. Yeah, it's become a pattern of Russia, of the Kremlin, retaliating with lots of might right after these incidents. I wouldn't be surprised if something happens tonight and the next day. This is Putin's way of striking out, of showing his anger. And as in Odessa, we saw once again that a lot of these targets were civilian targets.
Yeah. You know, this deal, though, is such a critical one, not just for Ukraine, but also globally. If it cannot be revived, this could have very serious consequences.
Yeah, absolutely. President Zelensky just said a few hours ago that 400 million people are at risk of hunger, of starvation, especially Somalia, Ethiopia, South Sudan, and Yemen. But, you know, Bev, I got to wonder about allies of Russia or countries close to Russia, for example, Egypt, very reliant on Ukrainian grain, sunflower oil, that kind of stuff. If that's cut off to them, it's going to cause problems for Russian foreign policy in parts of Africa and Asia. So, but in terms, and you know, grain prices are already tilting upwards as well. So, one of the things I'm calling for the West to explore, hopefully it has enough creative diplomacy and hubris, is to, you know, establish armed flotillas if need be, escorted marine convoys that go across the Black Sea. These are international waters, after all, to get that grain out of Ukraine. Because as I think it was Zelensky once said, why is it that a group of small men in the Kremlin get to decide the fate of hundreds of millions of people around the world and what's on their table at night?
Yeah. And to your point about some of Russia's allies being impacted, do you think that could ultimately bring Putin back to the table with this deal?
I think so. I think key also will be Turkey and President Erdogan, who, as you know, has just been reelected. He's in a strong position. He's proven himself to be one of the few world leaders who's able to speak to Zelensky and then Putin pretty much on the same day. That'll be critical. But once again, I think it's going to take a lot of creative diplomacy on the part of the West. And I don't think part of that diplomacy should be, as the UN Secretary General said, to give Russia sanctions relief. No way, because that's awarding the blackmailer, they'll just come back for more.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the attack on the Kerch Bridge. How much of a disruption is that damage to the bridge going to be?
Well, it depends who you believe. I just checked Telegram, and some of the Russian channels are showing video of one lane being open to two-way traffic. So nothing like what it was before. It'll take quite some time. The damage is quite extensive. One Russian official actually said yesterday it can't be repaired, whereas others are saying perhaps November or December. So remains to be seen. But in any case, whatever happened, and it looks like the Ukrainians are kind of taking credit for it, is this was a very, very bold strike. It strikes right at the heart of President Putin's proudness, because he attached himself so closely to that project.
Yeah, and also very strategically for Crimea.
Absolutely, because it serves as a supply line, a very crucial supply line for Russian forces to move their men, move their supplies into Crimea and then into that southern part of Ukraine. However, a lot of that goes by rail, and apparently the rail span wasn't that badly affected. But I think that's going to be a key part of the Ukrainian counteroffensive, to probe weaknesses and strike at supply lines. We're also finding out, Bev, that the Russians have had time to dig in deeply, to lay a lot of obstacles to tanks and other armored vehicles. So it's going to take other means to push them back, and that probably includes long-range missiles that can strike inside Russian territory at key military installations.
Yeah, so that will change the dynamic quite a lot, as will these cluster munitions that Ukraine has been supplied by the United States. How soon might they start deploying those? And, you know, Putin has also said, well, if they start using them, there could be severe consequences.
Yeah, well, Putin is a trained liar from his days as a KGB operative. Russia has already been using them. We know that since 2014, when I was with the OSCE, we found a lot. And Ukraine has apparently been using some already. But U.S. officials now say the cluster bombs are now in Ukraine. They can't say whether they've been deployed. Whether they have or not, I don't think they should have been sent here in the first place. These are very, very dangerous for children, especially those that tend to lay around for years to come. And also, it sends a bad signal to the bad actors in the world that weapons banned by more than 100 countries are being deployed by the United States and used here.
Yeah, it is a morally very tricky one. You know, as you say, Russia's deployed cluster munitions, even though Putin is pretending they haven't. Could there be a different form of repercussion from Moscow?
I think in terms of repercussions from Moscow, they're in a tight spot, especially with the reported removal of Wagner forces from the front line, bad morale on the Russian side, problems with resupply. So I think what they're going to be looking at is unorthodox forms of warfare. Don't forget, they still have the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, Europe's largest, in their hands. We all know about the blast at the Kakhovka Dam, a huge ecological disaster. Watch this space, more to come, quite sadly. It's like I wrote the other day, Bev, as soon as we thought we've seen the basement or the bottom of Russian inhumanity, they surprise us and do something worse.
Yeah, it is. It's just heartbreaking, as you say. Good to talk, Michael. Thanks so much.
My pleasure.